assistant at Eastern Washington. So shout out to the West Coast. Probably one of the only ones on here, but that's all right. Yeah, West Coast. That's right, Ethan. Pac-12. Anyway, so I'm just really excited to be on here with you guys and to help Ashton out. So I'm excited for what we got in store. I'm currently graduate assistant at Eastern Washington.
All right, Chris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Name's Chris Wilberding. I am currently a vice president and general manager for higher education management company called 2U, just like the great artist Prince would have written it, the letter 2 and the letter U, number 2 and the letter U. This was a startup company about 4 years ago. And way back in the day, 3 of my fellow Flyers are on this call. I was got my start in college basketball as a manager for the Dayton Flyers, and left there. Had one ultra successful middle school coaching season of 6-6, which is not on my resume, but it was something I'll never forget. And then somehow I parlayed that 500 season into assistant coaching position at Wittenberg University, a Division III school in Springfield, Ohio, and spent 5 years there. So live in Libertyville, Illinois, which is 30 miles north of Chicago, and married, 2 kids, kind of the suburban dream, which is a good thing. Coach Arnold, would you like to at least introduce yourself, and then we'll move down the path?
Sure. My name is James Arnold. I'm the director of athletics at Columbia College here in Central Missouri, where the University of Missouri is, for those of you that aren't familiar with Columbia. We are an NAIA school. I am a full-time administrator. I spent 20 years in higher education in a variety of ways, but I've been a women's basketball coach for the majority of those 20 years, did a lot of other things to pay the bills, which ultimately ended up being very helpful for me in this journey. But women's basketball coach at my core. The game of basketball has been extremely, extremely good to me, and has provided the majority of great things that have happened to me in my life and taken me to the places that I've been able to go. So now I've just finished my first year as a full-time administrator, made the transition from the sidelines. I've got a beautiful daughter, 11, 12, who's gonna be ready for a scholarship from one of you guys really soon at some point. Beautiful wife who's a teacher, and we live here in Fulton. It's about 20 minutes away from Columbia. Yeah, excited to be here with you.
Great, thanks to the both of you. All right, so the first question we have is for Chris. How do you measure student performance within the education sector?
Sorry, I'm working that mute button pretty hard. For what we do, it's a skills-based measurement tool. So we're looking at project-based learning. We're looking at people picking up skills and being able to put them into practice for what they do on a daily basis. Let me give you guys some context of what we do at 2U and what I do specifically. We teach digital education classes, so we're trying to bridge the digital skills gap. We teach web development classes, data visualization, UX, UI, graphic design, cybersecurity. 60% of our students have an undergraduate degree, want to do something different, and they come to us and we help train them up in skills, and we also help people change careers. So it's all about measurement of how can a person perform, not unlike the way we look at players on a basketball court, looking at their skills, their attitude, their desire. But it's about, can they achieve what employers are going to need as they exit our program? And I know, Ashton, you said that maybe Coach Arnold and I could go a little bit further back into our background. And Coach Arnold and I spoke a little bit earlier today, which was the highlight, the best 20 minutes I had all day, Coach. So I don't know if that makes it a really bad day for me or a really good day for you, but it was the best 20 minutes of my day. So
I enjoyed it.
Quick, I did too. So I was born in a small town in Ohio, 1,200 students. My dad was a basketball coach. He drove the bus. He taught social studies and phys ed. There's pictures of me rolling around on the stage in an old farm town gym with a stage on the side of the court. I'm 2 years old rolling around with a basketball. So I've been around the game for 48 years now. So that makes me 50. Was always in the gym, was always around the gym, but didn't have the athleticism to move beyond as a high school basketball player, but had a love for the game and knew I wanted to coach. So went to the University of Dayton, and this is a piece I think is real key for all of us. My freshman year, I went in and I wanted to be a manager Well, I didn't get the job, right? And as a Flyer fan from birth, I was distraught, right? I went there, had talked to the coaches before. It wasn't an opportunity that was going to present itself. Unfortunately, and fortunately, the legendary coach that was fired that year, Coach Donaher, he left in my sophomore year. And the first day, the head coach by the name of Jim O'Brien, who's on the bench for the Philadelphia 76ers, was the head coach in the NBA. I walked in and dropped my resume on his desk. And I said, I'm your manager. Like literally said, what do I need to do to become the manager for this basketball team? This is all I want to do. It's what I want to do in the future. And he said, let me get settled into my office and we'll get in touch later this week. So fast forward, I spent the next 3.5 years as we didn't have 12 managers like some of y'all have these days, right? There were 2 of us, right? I worked about 60 to 70 hours a week like many of you, but it was the best time I could have spent to learn the game and really learn what hard work was, right? So I spent that time, like I said, had that illustrious middle school basketball coaching career at 6 and 6, and parlayed that into a only assistant job at Wittenberg University, making $19,000 a year, and living on, I think back then I was able to stretch that as far as I could because I was also the head golf coach and in charge of facilities on Sunday nights. So it was essentially 3 for 1 they were getting out of me. But spent 5 years there, and it was a first master's degree for me. I learned from a guy I coached for 20 years prior to that and 20 years after I left. And I learned what it took to be a college basketball coach. And the best part about it all, candidly, is that today my players from that 5-year run in the late 90s are now in their, Coach Arnold, they're your age, and they're coming back to me, right? That those many years later saying, Coach, I need to talk to you about, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a coach, I'm a teacher. And what we did and the groundwork we laid back in the day has put me in a position where I can continue helping those young people or younger people develop. What I wanted to do is share a couple key nuggets with you guys. I've got a little side thing I'm starting up because I can't sit still is my biggest problem. But I'm launching the 419 project, and you'll see it if you're interested. You'll see it come out in a couple of weeks on a website. But that 419 is what's really important to me, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So the 4 comes from the 4 P's, and what I believe that fundamentally all people are put on this earth with one sole purpose, and they gain their greatest happiness when their passion impacts others in a positive way. So people, purpose, passion, and positive, right? The 1 is my objective in life since a very young age has been to help people become the best version of themselves, right? There's an author by the name of Matthew Kelly who coined that phrase about 15 or 20 years ago, but that's all I ever wanted to do was help one person become all that they could be personally and professionally. And then behind that is what I call the foundation of who you are as a person, right? There are 9 things that you've all heard from parents, coaches, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles. And those 9 points are this, and I'm going to have to look over at my secondary screen because I can only count to about 6. But the first one is about self-awareness. It's know thyself. Spend time getting to know who you are, what drives you, what motivates you, and what separates you from other people, right? The second is bloom where you're planted, right? Don't ever be so aspirational you're thinking about what's next. Be the best GA you can, be the best manager you can, be the best laundry washer you can, be the best shoe packer you can, whatever it is, you got to do that better than anybody else. What plays into that is no longer is hard work enough. Like that's just the admission price these days, right? People work hard at every level. You have to bring that to the table every single day. And then this is easy for basketball folks. The we is always greater than the me, right? And it's a simple equation. Just take that greater than sign that you learned when you were in 3rd or 4th grade, and it's we is greater than me. I'll bring it home with the last couple here. Dream bigger than you think you should. I hindered myself early by saying, no, I don't want to go do a GA. I'm just going to go use my degree, right? Who knows what happens if I would have taken a GA job right out of my undergrad days instead of going to teach social studies. Like maybe I would have ended up in like Ethan in the Pac-12, right? I don't know. Maybe I would have ended up someplace other than what Wittenberg was, which was great for me. But dream bigger. Nobody can hold you back but yourself. Be empathetic, right? Especially in this business. Coach Arnold and I were talking about earlier. At some point, your paths are going to cross again, and you may be going for the same job, right? I can't tell you the gentlemen and the ladies that I cross paths with working 12 weeks at camps every summer during college and during my years at Wittenberg that, I mean, not to name drop because they wouldn't remember me at all, but they may from the stories I would tell, but Sean Miller, Archie Miller, right? Thad Amato when he was at Ohio State, Chris Collins at Northwestern. I used to bunk with these guys, right? And that's the paths you cross. Those are the elbows you rub. So, but be empathetic to everyone because you just want to make people that much better. The last 3 items real quick, pay it forward, right? Don't expect anything in the back. It feels good to do something for someone else. And it will come back to you someday. The what you know is often just as important as the who you know, right? We just talked a moment ago about networking. And then the last one, and it's positivity always wins. If you all aren't reading John Gordon's books, pick them up, all of them, right? Find an opportunity to read The Carpenter, The Energy Bus, The Coffee Bean with he and Damon West. But fill your mind with positivity and optimism. That's what people are looking for when they're hiring. They want people that they know are going to do all the things that I just mentioned, but at the end of the day, positivity and optimism gets them where they need to be. So I just went a few minutes there, but as you can tell, hopefully I'm extremely passionate about what I do and about helping individuals. But if you can find your purpose and your passion in life, you're going to have a lot of fun and be very successful. And if I can be of assistance through this phone call, after this Zoom call, let me know. Let's connect and we'll make some things happen for you. Coach, Coach Arnold, I know you wanted to share a few things too.
Well, really, I'm excited to be here with you guys. And I like the fact that this sort of time together is called Beyond Basketball. It's not life without basketball. It's beyond basketball. And, for me, basketball never goes away. It just might be a little bit different in your life. And one of the things I hope we get a chance to talk with, or if you want to talk a little bit after this, is there's going to come a time where there's a question mark about whether what I'm chasing or what I'm doing is really what's right for me or right for the obligations I have for my family or the obligations I have financially, because there becomes a time where it's in question. And I think people tend to look at that as a failure. Like, oh, I failed at my dream. In reality, it's just the train track changes and you go to a different path that is not life without basketball, whether you continue in higher education or you continue in marketing or you become an official or whatever it is. There's life still with basketball, but it's a little bit different. And how can you look at that as a positive? My whole life, I just wanted to be a high school history teacher and coach. I'm from a town way smaller than probably any of you. I'm from Paw Paw, West Virginia. It's a town of about 600 right now, right? And I moved sight unseen, packed everything I owned up in an Explorer, drove for an interview in Trenton, Missouri, had never been to Missouri other than one time early in my life, got the job, asked them, took the biggest stones of my life to say, hey, if I get this job, is it okay if I go ahead and move into the college housing now? ? And they said yes. So I moved into an apartment, $7,500, assistant men's coach, assistant women's coach, and residential coordinator, right? So we all have those stories that we're doing to pay the bills and make a dream happen. But what happens 4 years later when you want to have children or you want to have a spouse or you want to make a real check? What do you do, right? And how does basketball fit into that? And does basketball fit into that? And I don't want you to see it as a failure because every single job I've ever had, including that job at North Central Missouri College in Trenton, Missouri, a junior college, I thought would be the last job I ever had. I thought I had made it. I thought I had arrived, baby. I was it. And listen, I was around some really good people. And I don't brag a lot about this, but the best people I was around, we won 91 games in 4 years. We're 6 points shy of a national championship. I'm 26 years old. I'm like, this is easy, yo. This is so easy. Okay, so I took that for granted, moved on to a few other jobs, thought that'd be the last job that I ever had, spent some time at an NAIA school as a head coach, spent some time at the Division I level as an assistant coach and recruiting coordinator. All amazing experiences, but all have led me to the point that I'm at, just like the point where Chris is at. What I did as a coach and what you're doing as a manager and what you're doing in ops or what you're doing in whatever it is going to translate to the next job, whether that's with basketball or beyond basketball. So I'm excited to share some of those things from my experiences. And also as an administrator, prior to becoming a full-time administrator, I spent lots of time as an assistant AD, lots of times doing sports information. I spent times coordinating intramurals, working in residential life, all the stuff that you guys are doing too, to pay the bills and to make yourself a better, well-rounded person in higher education. So yeah, so hopefully, that can, the background that I've had can be of assistance as you're trying to navigate what that looks like.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, coaches. So kind of going to build on that whole idea of going beyond basketball. Was it hard for you to step away from coaching and to kind of transition into the more administrative side of things? And if so, like, was it a goal for you to get into administration, or was it kind of just a part of your plan?
Really good question. I knew all along that I enjoyed the administrative side of things. I liked, because basketball has always, but like most of you, I wasn't just a basketball player in high school, right? I was fortunate enough. I played Division II basketball. I came from a small high school where I was a volume shooter, right? I was the guy that led the state in scoring, but I shot 41 times a game, right? Didn't translate as well at the next level, but I was a solid player at a bad Division II school. Okay. That's what I was. And so basketball, but that wasn't my whole life. I played football, I played baseball. So I just loved athletics. So when I got into basketball, that job where I was working in the residence halls, I had that piece of life that was also higher education that wasn't basketball, but I would volunteer and go out and throw batting practice for baseball. If they needed somebody to announce for the women's basketball game at the time or for the volleyball game at the time, I would volunteer to do that. So I always enjoyed the administrative side of things just to stay busy. Like Chris, I don't do well sitting still, if you can tell at all. And so that was my way of staying busy, and I enjoyed that. So when I had a chance to officially get involved in some administrative capacities, it not only helped me be a better husband because I was able to bring home more money for the family as an assistant athletic director, but I started to enjoy helping other people. I started to enjoy helping coaches solve problems that I had and just being a sounding board. And I did that as an assistant AD at the NAIA level, the Division III level. I was a head coach as well as an associate AD where I had some direct oversight of programs, really started getting a liking for the budgetary process. I went back to school and got an MBA, and I don't want to get off onto a tangent of education, but I will tell you that if you have a magic wand, every coach should get an MBA. Everything that you learn in an MBA is about athletics. I promise you that. Human resource management is roster management. Marketing that you take is recruiting, right? Budgeting is so critical nowadays, even at the Division I levels with the economics of the economy and the economic slide that we're seeing. Roster management and economics are a huge piece of the job at every school outside of BCS, right? And so I did that, and then I started realizing, okay, I'm probably going down this administrative route when it's ready. Was it hard to step away this past year because I was having success at the Division III school? I had a really high quality of life. My daughter was next to us on the bench at every game and in practices. And I thought, if I leave coaching now, will I get a chance to coach her? And I had to sacrifice that. But I also knew the opportunity I had was so good that it outweighed the options to make that move. And I still very much miss it. But I also know all those things that are positive about getting into all those positives from getting to help all of my sports and learn about lacrosse. And my God, learn about esports, that bizarro world, right? But I've learned about that, and I've learned about bowling, and I've learned how I can help volleyball. And I really enjoy that. And I've actually, honestly, I've had a little bit better quality of life because I'm not owning those losses every night. I'm not owning those, did I make a mistake with this student athlete? I'm sort of allowing my coaches to have that part of it, but I'm able to help them and assist. So
I'm going to answer that a little bit differently because when I left coaching, I left college athletics, right? So I'll never forget, I had not announced to the team or even my boss that I was departing, but I knew that I was going to leave Springfield, Ohio, move to Chicago because I'd already lined up an opportunity to teach in a juvenile correctional facility. I'm a person who believes he can help everybody. Like I'm 50, I can still change the world, right? But at that point, I wanted to go in and I wanted to work I worked on the west side of Chicago for 2 years teaching 16, 18-year-old young men, helping them get back on the right track. But when I made that decision, we lost in our conference championship game. And nobody knew except my mom and dad. And I remember somehow finding that place behind the bleachers at the College of Worcester, our biggest rival where we just lost. And I literally broke down because I knew that was it. I knew at that moment I was taking the next step to impact more young lives, but also to become a husband and a father, which is what I always wanted to do. So when the ball stopped bouncing for me, which it'll stop bouncing for y'all too, right? It just depends on when. Some get cut freshman year of high school, some make it to the NBA, but the ball's going to stop, right? And it's what you do with what you've learned in the game and in your life that is going to help you be successful. But yeah, and I'll say this, Coach Arnold, to your point, I too earned an MBA, and every single thing that we learn there will pay off in not only in your business life, your coaching career, but it'll help in your family situation, from financials to how to manage crucial conversations, right? Everything that you learn in that degree pays itself off very, very soon in an interesting way that you didn't expect going into a Master's of Business Administration program. And then the last thing I'll say, the last thing here real quick, I still coach. I was just on a call at 2:30 Central Time with a person who doesn't report to me with the organization, who wants to take on a leadership role in the company. And I'm coaching her. You can call it mentoring, you can call it whatever it is. I'm still coaching, right? Every single day, I'm utilizing skills that I learned on the hardwood and how to motivate people, how to develop relationships, develop rapport, find out what they're really passionate about to help them achieve those personal and professional goals. I haven't stopped coaching since I was 19 years old. And it's important that you realize that the skills you're developing today in human relationship development, as Coach Arnold said, that's going to be there for the rest of your life. So just because I left basketball doesn't mean that I left coaching. Do I miss it? Hell yes, I miss it. Every Friday and Saturday night during the winter, I miss basketball. I miss it right now, right? I mean, come on. I have an 11-year-old son who plays, but I don't coach him because I don't think it's fair to him at this point. I'd be yelling at him too much.
Excuse my problems with the group chat. I ended up combining some answers there, but I was trying to get to some of your questions just there as well. But the one thing I want everybody, if you've got a graduate degree that you've started, I don't want you to panic like, oh shoot, I don't have an MBA. Like, don't panic, because listen, it's things that you can pick up in the same sort of things that we're talking about. But if you do have that chance to take some classes that are human resource management, especially if you end up working at a school where that is free for you, I would always encourage you to do that. So I don't want you to panic and think, oh shoot, I'm going down the marketing route or I'm going down the coaching route. Those are all great situations. I also was 30 exactly when I got my MBA too. And I was a much better student at that age than I was when I was 22. So there's a lot of value there for sure.
Both
Question?
fantastic answers. Yes, thank you. Kind of building on what you both said, could you just talk about how you've been able to cultivate like relationships in the sports industry, how you stay connected with people?
I'll go first on this. If you're going to coach, I'm just going to tell you, it's a people person job. If you're not interested in working with people, it may not be the right industry for you today. Now that's probably changed, maybe some since the 70s or 80s. And we're not talking about professional sports, but when we're talking about the ability to relate to young people, staff members, folks across campus, boosters, just public in general, it's a people person game. And so even if that's not your comfort level, there are things I'm a people person for sure, but there are things that aren't in my comfort zone. And in order to be a better coach and to be a better administrator, I have to get out of my comfort zone and put on a strong face in those moments. That's what's going to happen in order for you to really grow your network, to really figure out a way to connect with folks that can be meaningful for you. Collecting business cards and being desperate is not meaningful connections. It's important to make sure that you are doing the things that you're doing today, and also following up with folks that are on this call and finding ways to do exactly what you're doing. And then, follow through with what you say you're going to do, and always pay it forward. Like Chris said earlier, like, be generous with your time, because when you're generous, it comes back to you. I'm a big believer in karma. I'm a big believer in the game of basketball rewards people that do things the right way. When I coached all the time, I'd say that didn't go in because you were acting like an ass, right? That did not go well for you because of this, this, and this. The game rewards hard work. I got a kid that's shooting. It's a shooting slump. All of a sudden they go in and start rebounding. Guess what happens? Shots start falling. So life is a lot of the same way. So it's really important for you to do exactly what you're doing, but also follow through, be courteous, and be genuine. Be authentic, be who you are. It's okay to be exactly who you are. Don't try to be something that you're not, and that's not easy to do when you're trying to break into the business or get that big break or try to move up. But authenticity is important for administrators and for coaches that are looking to make hires.
So those key relationships, and I'll toot John Gordon. He has a podcast called Positive University that's amazing. But one of my favorite coaches to hear from the last couple of years is I just forgot his last name, Buzz. He was at Marquette. He was at Virginia Tech. He's at Texas. Buzz Williams. Buzz, did I get it? I just completely forgot his last name. You got to find his. You got to find his podcast, right? Because he was on John Gordon, and as a JUCO manager, he thought he made it, right? He thought he made it, but what he did to develop relationships and to get his name out there was, at one point he was writing 400 people that he'd met through camps the previous summer a handwritten note every week, right? And it would be like, hey, y'all, we just lost last week by 6. Defense wasn't there. I'll write you a letter next week to keep you in the loop, right? He got a job out of one of those letters he'd written over the years. Now, I'm not saying that writing handwritten notes 400 a week is the best use of your time, but what I will tell you is this. I mean, how many of you get a letter in the mail anymore, right? How many of you get something that looks professional sent to you? I get excited when I get mail. That's because I'm a little old school, but I've got a couple letters on my desk from people that have just, hey, haven't talked to you in a couple of years, want to get connected again. It's right there, right? So how do you develop those relationships? Listen to what people have to say. Make them talk about themselves. People love to talk about themselves, just as I did a few minutes ago. Learn what they're passionate about. Love them, right? Love their energy, love their passion for what they're doing, but give them an opportunity to tell you what they enjoy, and then play off that. If you see an article that you like, email it to them, right? If you see a podcast that you're enjoying, you think that Jessica in Eastern Washington could benefit from it, shoot it to her, right? That's how you make connections. That's how you develop relationships. I will tell you this, it's easier today with social media to make connections, but it's more difficult to make quality and develop quality relationships. You can connect. I got 3,500 connections on LinkedIn. I probably know or have met 2,000 of them, right? But I feel I can reach out to folks because we've got a common bond there. But to make a true relationship, you got to work at it, right? You got to put forth the effort, and they're going to remember that more than if they're not giving it back to you.
So good. I love that. Yeah, it really is a people business. And that's why, again, like, we just seriously appreciate all these little nuggets you guys are giving us. To go ahead and build back on just being an AD, what would you say, James, has been like your most difficult thing about being an AD and transitioning from coaching into that administrative side?
Well, the first one's kind of funny, but it's real. When your players don't listen to you, you can run them. Can't very well just run a bunch of adults, right? I say that in jest, but the reality is, when you're coaching, you're sort of the ruler in a lot of ways of these young people's lives, and you can do a lot of things to motivate them. With adults, if they don't listen to you, you have to take very seriously how you can motivate and get them to complete tasks and do things the way you want them to do it, or do things the right way. And I've got a great staff, but there's always those moments where you're trying to get through to them. And if you wanted to make a change, there's people's lives with children attached to them and, major salaries and stuff. So that's been a little bit of a different, finding ways to motivate, because I'm not someone that wants to motivate through fear, but finding ways to get people to think differently and to attack their task differently. I think the other challenge that I've had is simply losing some contact with student athletes. Like that's what I did for 20 years. I had a touch, like I had that everyday impact. And so one of the things I was really fortunate is Columbia let me teach a marketing class. So I filled in for a lady that was on maternity leave, ended up being the best thing ever. So I had that sort of touch with normal students, some athletes and some non-student athletes, that allowed me to keep that. The administrative change is literally the way I look at it. As a coach, I was always trying to help my team, and it's very micro level thinking. What's best for women's basketball? I spent some time coaching golf. I spent some time coaching baseball, again, to pay the bills, right? And to help my institutions out. And I think you should always find ways to be as valuable as possible to your employer, whether that's in coaching or whether that's at Walmart or if that's at Long John Silver. You are going to be as valuable to your employer as you can. And so I always tried to do that. Very fortunate to have been taught that at a young age. But in basketball, your sport, in us, it's a very micro level of thinking. When 19 sports and 350 student athletes, we don't have football, so 350 student athletes, that's very macro level of thinking. And so what's right for one sport may not be right for all sports. So changing the way that I'm thinking, and also getting my coaches to think about the entire fruit basket. I use this analogy all the time that each sport, it's all fruit, but every fruit is different. Bananas have different needs and grow differently and last different times than an apple. An apple is different than a grape. And so if we try to make rules and policies and decisions based on what's good for fruit, we're going to have a lot of people that's upset. So it takes a lot of massaging to do that.
Great response. Does anybody have a question? You can just go ahead and unmute yourself. Nicole, I saw you had a couple questions. If you want to unmute yourself and just kind of ask yourself.
Yeah, I had a separate question. How do you handle some of the different needs of your coaches? I mean, you can't obviously do everything that they want. So how do you kind of prioritize what to give and kind of what you can't really place as a priority?
Well, for me, it's a lot like coaching. And thanks for the question, Nicole. It's a lot like coaching. I had some people, so we always had this philosophy, and I didn't develop it early on in coaching. I am sad to say that the first 5-6 years of my career, if you knew me then, I was a stomper and I was a yeller, and I motivated in that way because that's what I knew, right? And then eventually I was very fortunate through watching other people and maturing, to be quite honest. I realized that's not who I wanted to be, and I proceeded to get better each year and try to. So when I manage people, whether it's coaches or if I managed a pool for the summer for extra money, I managed McDonald's when I was in college for 3.5 years. I'm telling you, it was a great job. I was a shift manager at McDonald's. And for me, everybody has a thing, okay? Every single player on your team has a thing, right? Some of them are great players and they don't go to class. That's their thing. Some of them can't play a lick, but they do all the fundraising. They show up on time, and they're the first person to show up on the 5-mile run, and they work their ass off, but they just can't play, but they're part of your program, right? But if I'm willing to overlook one thing from one person, I have to be able to overlook one thing from everybody else. And so for me, when I manage people, I'm willing to accept them for who they are. I want to improve their weaknesses. Like Nicole, if you played for me and you had trouble driving left, we're going to work every day in skill work on you driving left, but I'm not going to call a play in a game for you to go left and try to be and expect you to be successful doing that. So managing people for me is the exact same way. I've got some coaches that are dynamic and they're great and they win like crazy, but they cannot fill out an expense report correctly. Their credit card stuff is a mess. They can't figure out. But if I'm willing to put up with the fact that I have another coach that's really good at that and he's having trouble landing high-level recruits, I have to work with everybody with where they're at and try to improve their weaknesses. Just like you don't outlet the ball to a 6'3" big that can't handle. So why am I going to get upset with them for not being able to do that, right? I have to help them to be the best possible. But the challenge to that is whether, again, it's coaches or if it's in the private sector, how can I empower people to be better at those weaknesses, but put them in a position to be successful? I used to tell my kids all the time when they would outlet the ball to a bad, not a 1 or a 2, I'd say, shame on you. Yeah. So for me, if I expect one of my employees to do something that's not really their strong suit without giving them proper guidance and help and understanding, shame on me. So I have to manage everybody individually on their strengths and weaknesses, and that takes work and that takes understanding. And by the way, what it does take is for me to do a really good job of trying to get to know them. And sometimes I'm good at that, sometimes I'm not. Find out what makes them tick, just like your players. You know that some people, I could go up to this person, I could say, you are playing like ass tonight, get your head out of your rear end. Some kids can handle that. I had other kids that I have to go over to and say, hey, how was lunch today? Oh, that's awesome. Let me tell you, you're doing a great job at this, but I really need you to do this. That's management of people. And you have to do that whether you're an administrator or you're a coach or you're Long John Silver's.
So I'm gonna go against you for a second, Coach, but it's not really against you. Play to people's superpowers, right? Everybody on this call has got something you're better at than anybody else. Coach, whether it's filling out expense reports correctly or whatever it may be, play to those superpowers. Because then what I'll tell you in the business world, if I got to take time to help develop somebody's weakness, I'm not going to hire a person for their weakness. I'm going to hire them for their strength, right? So how can, when I bring people on board, they got to be positive. They got to have a vision that they can make differences. They have to be thoughtful in every single interaction that they have. But I brought you on board because you got a superpower. You're amazing with people, right? You can command a classroom. You can connect with anyone, right? So weaknesses are great to develop as an individual, but to get results, I got to play a super. Don't give it to the 6'3" big who can't pound it up the floor, right? Let that person get down there and throw it to him and reward them for working hard to get down the floor. The other thing that I'll share is, and you said it, the way you treat your players is the way you treat people, right? And you can't treat them all the same, right? I'll bring it back up. The Last Dance. It's the only real thing I'm watching these days. Phil Jackson, the hippie from the 60s, right? Connected with the hippie from the 80s and 90s, right? Because he found a connection about their Indian background. Nobody got Dennis Rodman like Phil Jackson did, and nobody saw Phil Jackson getting Dennis Rodman, but he found that one connection point. Nicole, you can find it with somebody, right? You got to find that one thing, what it is, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's travel, the love of something. Even if you don't have that same interest, be interested when you're with that person, and you're going to be able to develop a relationship, and you're going to learn along the way. So, Coach, I'm with you, man.
That's brilliant. To echo that real quick is I think we all have to understand, and I just can be sometimes a little blunt, a little candid, and that's good and bad in this world. But for me, the idea that everybody's treated equally, like, listen, when I got on the bus and the bus was leaving at 8:05 a.m., they would say, I was always the last one to say where we were going. I turned around and make sure we had the right 5. If we didn't have the right 5, I was waiting past 8:05. If I had the right 5, we were gone because the time had expired. Now, that may not be a popular decision, but that's reality.
Right.
The president on my campus has a parking space. I do not. The head coach at your school makes more money than you do, right? So it's not about being fair or being equal. It's about being fair. And I think that is apropos to coaching. It's apropos to management of people. I treat people exactly how I believe that in that situation is in fairness to what they're performing with. So I always like to throw that little nugget out that for us to sit here and think that, load management and playing time is not fair. Raises are not fair. Jobs are not, you guys are going through this and your jobs are not fair. I have people ask me all the time, and maybe this will get to another thing. They'll say, Coach, what am I doing wrong? Well, you're not doing anything wrong necessarily. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And in job searches, it's what are they interested in? Not necessarily that you did anything wrong, but what fits what they're looking for. Who do they know? I had a podcast that I did a while back, and I got some feedback on it of interest is, like, if my basketball coach leaves tomorrow, I have a drawer that I open, and there's a list of 10 names that I'll go through before I'll look at any applicant. Fair or unfair, that's reality. So what you got to do is get on that list for somebody. Get on that list, because that's how you'll get known, right? And I don't know the way to always do that, but this is the right step, right? I've been impressed with people that I've run into at the Final Four. I've been impressed with people that I've had a beer with at the Final Four. I've been impressed with people that are on calls like this. And I'll say, you know what, when I got a volleyball opening, let me remember who that kid is and what they did. And then when I open that drawer, but it doesn't mean that if you're not on that list, you've done anything wrong. Supply and demand for coaching positions right now, guys. Wowzer, right? So Aaron, I see you shaking your head, my man. It's good to see you. But, how's Clemson treating you, by the way?
Unreal.
ACC style. See, these big rollers on here.
So, Coach, big rollers. It's that Clemson love, right?
Yeah.
You just hit something that was really interesting, because you're going to pull that file cabinet open and see those resumes. I have never gotten a job that I cold applied for. The first job I ever got out of college, this is crazy. Alex, Henry, Ben, take care of the referees at the University of Dayton Arena, right? So at post game, again, there were two of us, but I was in charge of beer and pizza, maybe because I liked them a lot, both beer and pizza. And at Dayton, that's easy to do. But for 3.5 years, I delivered post-game beer and pizza to every ref, right? That's just what I had to do. I walked into my first interview at Vandalia Butler Middle School, just north of Dayton, Ohio. I had no idea this was going to be the case. They said, yes, the principal will see you now. I go over, knock on the door, open it. He's like, Wilbur. I'm like, Mr. Licklider. Guy was a Big Ten basketball official who worked about 30 of our games over the 3.5 years I was there. He's like, you want to sit down or you want to go see where your classroom is? Right? I never had an interview. And from him, I got a recommendation at Wittenberg. From Wittenberg, I worked for an alumni, but I've never gotten a job where I've actually just sent in a cold application. It's all been about having a beer at the Final Four, getting on a Zoom call today, right? Working the network. And that's just how it happens. But literally the job I'm in right now, I got let go from my previous job on a Monday for downsizing. I was distraught. Family was going on vacation. The next day, the Tuesday, it was February 7th, I believe. I get a phone call from my now boss. And he says, Wilbur, I got an opportunity here for you at this startup. I need you to come on and do what you did for me at Kaplan 10 years ago. That was it. To your point, Coach, bust your ass, do the right thing, bloom where you're planted. Don't be a fool when you shouldn't be a fool. Have your fun, but don't do anything on social media that's going to get you caught up down the road, right? So it's all about know yourself, bloom where you're planted, work hard, right? All those things I talked about, it pays off. And I am by far ultra successful, but I'll tell you what, I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm happy.
Has anybody ever, to segue to that, when we were getting jobs, when my wife and I got married, and she married into coaching, so she knew what the lifestyle was getting into it. She's been great. But she would say, when I got the Highland Community College job and when I got the Central Methodist job, she'd say, why are all the schools that we go to, are we ever going to get a job where they're good? And I'm like, no, because those jobs aren't available, right? The job where they're good, I'm not getting. Like, that's just the reality of it. And so I go back to that question all the time. And this is not to throw stones, but I have young people a lot will say to me, I'll do anything to coach. And I'll say, okay, I've got a friend in Idaho that has an opening. Well, I'm not moving to Idaho. Well, okay, right? Like, and I know circumstances say that maybe you're not able to do that. Well, then, hey, I've got someone that's looking for a part-time assistant. Well, I can't do that. Well, okay, but that's sort of maybe when the beyond basketball kicks in for you. And it doesn't mean you're without basketball, but it lets you understand that where the supply and demand is, how hard it is to get jobs, how hard it is to climb. Incidentally, some of you, and I don't know everybody's background, but I wasn't a big time player. I didn't play in the Big East or the Big 12 or the Pac-12 or anything like that where I could have somebody make a call for me, right? And so for many of us, we're trying to cultivate careers having been no player or an average player or some high school experience. that makes our challenge even greater because we are trying to fight in through that. And so having an open mind about what is the next step and what is attainable. And the last point I'll say on that, when I talk to a lot of people, the first job that I ever got as a head coach was because it paid $19,000. And I was the best of the $19,000 candidates. If that salary range would have been $40,000, I wouldn't have gotten it because I'm not the best of the $40,000 candidates. When I got the recruiting coordinator job in the OVC, that job paid $60,000. If it would have paid $75,000, I wouldn't have gotten it. Somebody with a better resume would have. So sometimes you have to bet on yourself. You have to bet on yourself that you're going to make this work in order for it to pay off in some fashion in basketball or beyond basketball.
I love that. Bet on yourself. That's really good.
That's straight fire, right?
Yeah, literally.
I mean, that's just. I had a conversation earlier today with, I don't think it was Coach Arnold. It was, you all have a choice, right? And you can't, whatever choice it is. When I got offered that number 2 assistant job at St. Francis in Pennsylvania, paying $2,200 a year, $2,200 a year, and I had student loans popping up in like 6 weeks, I said no. There were 25 other people waiting for it, but it wasn't the right thing for me. But you do have to bet on yourself, right? But you have a choice, whether it's every single day when you wake up and you thank whatever higher belief you have, you thank that and get up and go conquer the day. Because there are people that say, yeah, I'll do anything to coach, but they won't go to Idaho. They won't mop the floors. They won't pick up the popcorn in the back of the NAI gyms. They won't go work summer camps for $50 a week, try to make sure they have enough gas to get to the next camp, right? They won't sleep in the locker room. Like 12 of us did one summer at the University of Tennessee because the dorm was closed and they didn't know it. You got to make that bet on yourself, and you got to make the choice. And it's.
And I don't want everybody to think with that. I don't want everybody to think that you have to take a vow of poverty to be successful in this business, right? But like the reality is, there are multiple paths that will be beyond basketball, which can be very fruitful for you, and then still have basketball in your lives in some way or another. Right? If you have the ability to go be like, listen, you can go right now and be the manager at Lowe's and make a boatload of money, right? And be able to work with people and help them and still coach basketball or be involved in basketball with officiating or some way. Those are very realistic paths. And I want to hit on one more thing that I think gets lost. 25 years ago, someone like me, 35 years ago, someone like me would have coached high school basketball. Someone like you would have coached high school basketball. And now we don't coach high school basketball for a variety of reasons. And we're all trying to get those low-level GA spots or entry-level assistant coaching spots. But I will tell you, there's a need for really good high school coaches. There's a need for people to go get our game right, especially on the women's side, where a lot of states are still hiring the offensive coordinator who needs a little bit extra money that will go out there and run flex for 10 minutes, right? There's a need for that, and you can make a great living. I have a good friend named Bryce Tesdahl, who was a high-level Division II player, was on the fast track to coach at a high-level Division II or higher men's basketball side. He decided what's best for my family is to post up in the Twin Cities and be a really good high school basketball coach. And listen, that's all most of us probably ever set out to do, because the high school basketball coach at my place was the coolest MFer, man, right? He had that lanyard out, walked around all fit and stuff. Like that was like what I wanted to be, coach social studies or teach social studies and coach high school basketball. So I don't want you to leave here saying, well, these guys are saying I got to be poor or I got to take a vow of poverty. I'm just saying that you can bet on yourself and make things happen. And then a lot of times when you take into consideration about what a job's paying, you might get on there and somebody will say, hey, I got an assistant job open and it's only going to pay 10 grand, but I can get you a dorm room. What I know about small colleges is this, and I've worked at a bunch of them. I've been very blessed. Small colleges will find a way to take care of you, right? You might then be running intramurals for an extra 4 grand. You might then get 10 grand for summer school. You can then drive the golf team for another $200. Like, there are ways for you to make it work if you're willing to, and you're able. Guys, some of you might have children, you have spouses, you have financial obligations, and I get that. But always bet on the ability for yourself to make yourself valuable to where those things will work out when you have it. But don't take a vow of poverty if it's not in line for what you need to be doing for your life. There's lots of ways to be beyond basketball or in basketball where you can make a good living and still be very, very satisfied.
Does anybody else have a question? Those were incredible responses. Thank you.
I got a question for Coach Arnold. What's so wrong about Idaho, man? You're hating on the home state there, buddy.
Listen, bro. You're talking about somebody that moved sight unseen from West Virginia to Missouri, and I will go anywhere for the game. I tweeted a while back, like, somebody had one of those chains during this whole thing about tell your story and where you've been, and you got Hiawatha, Kansas, and Fulton, Missouri, and Fayette, Missouri, and Cape Girardeau, and all these places. But for me and you guys, home is where the hoop is, right? Home is where the hoop is. And even if, like, for me, I'm not a basketball coach, but basketball got me here. And I don't want you to view that if basketball, every skill you picked up, everything that you picked up in this experience as a basketball coach or a manager, if that takes you to being an executive at a real estate company or a personal trainer or anything, that is not wasted time. That is where the home is, and the hoop brought that to you. I'm a poor kid from West Virginia that nobody else from his family went to school. Nobody else from my graduating class of 34 left home, right? And so for me, the only way I was ever going to be able to visit 48 out of the 50 states was from basketball. And I thank God every time when I get off a plane and I'm like in El Paso, or when I was at SEMO, which is low Division I, and I walk out on the court and I'm like at Texas A&M, I'm thinking, dude, like, this is a dream come true. And it's all because of the game. And that game has now led me to be an athletic director, but it might lead you to be a great teacher. It might lead you to be a great manager of an aquatic center. It might lead you to be a really good a real estate agent or nutrition specialist. Lots of ways to use the tools and the values of the game of basketball to further your life beyond it.
You might end up as a vice president for a company you'd never heard of and was never around 10 years ago.
Boom.
Right. Somebody asked a question earlier, or was it maybe one of the pre questions I saw was it your goal to get to the position you're in now, or did it just happen? Right. I don't know who asked that question. I had no idea what this job, when I took this job, I didn't even know what I was doing. Right. I just knew that if I worked hard and I'm just smart enough, I could figure it out. Right. My goal when I went to the University of Dayton, my goal was to be the head coach at the University of Dayton in 25 years. Right. I want to be the first manager to ever be the head coach at my alma mater at the University of Dayton. Right. Didn't happen. The guy they got now there was one of my favorite players growing up, and I think he's going to stick around for a while. So I'm really excited. But I wanted to be John Wooden. Right. When I was 18, I thought I was going to coach at the highest level. And I do coach at the highest level. Right. Every single day I have an opportunity to impact lives. It's unbelievable. Right. It's the same reason I love coaching 7th grade middle school, watching them develop as young men and young women. And then today I'm coaching people who are mid-career trying to figure out what they want to do with it. It's the same thing, guys. You're doing it now with a basketball, right? But it's the same thing as what I'm doing for an educational company. I can't coach. You said it great, Coach Arnold, but all the skills. I mean, I was running budgets of $75,000 as a manager at Dayton for equipment, right? I didn't know what a budget was when I was 19 years old. I knew I had like $200 a month from the work study they paid me or whatever to live on, but they made us do budgets. They made us do meal money back in the day. I grew up from 18 to 22 because I was responsible for a basketball program that, hell, I didn't know what I was doing, but you're all smart enough. You're not, you know how many people could be on this call right now? All of them. All the people could be on this call right now. Like 326 million people in America could be sitting here right now listening to this call, participating in this call. But what do we have? About 20 people here max. You are making yourself better when everybody else is just chilling, watching Netflix, playing PS4. That's it, right? So don't pat yourself on the back too long, but you're making yourself better right now.
And to all my managers out there, there's a guy named Gabe Henry that was a manager for me at North Central Missouri College. He's now, a few years later, he was a manager that year, just a young little kid that couldn't make the basketball team, so I let him stick around, shoot some free throws on free throw break and stuff for us. He later on at Central Methodist, I needed to make a hire. I hired him as my top assistant. Then he goes on, he spent some time at Gonzaga, and now he's an assistant butler in the Big East. He was a manager for me, right? And when I was at SEMO, the guy that was our guard manager, named Matt Moore, I worked with post players, and Matt worked with Juwan Scaife, who his sister played at Dayton, for you Dayton folks. One of my good friends. He's now at Utah State. But Juwan Scaife's one of my best friends, and he was at Evansville and was at SEMO with me, and Murray. He's been a little bit of a vagabond, but he would work, him and Matt Moore would work on the guard workouts all the time together, because Matt was the guard manager, worked with the guards. And when Juwan had to go on the road recruiting, here's Matt doing those workouts. So when I got the job at Westminster, who was the first person I called? That manager to come be my assistant for 3 years, right? Because I knew that I could work with him, and that he knew how we would work together, and he would volunteer to help with scouts when, I'm grinding in the office late at night. Those of you that have been on small staffs know that, like, I'm doing every other scout at the time, and I'm just running behind, and my boss is busting my hump. And here's Matt. He's like, well, I can do all the blobs for you if you want. We're at 2:00 in the morning. He's doing all the blobs. And I'm like so desperate that I let this 21-year-old kid put my livelihood in his hands. And I go back and look, and the blobs are great. And so then I realized that that's somebody that I can hire. That's how you get on that list, guys, is exactly what you're doing. And so I just think it's always dream big, but be ready to take a different path when it's time. And when it's time is going to be unique and different for all of you. And there's one quick note on that I think is really beneficial for you guys. It used to be, Chris and I are close to the same age, used to be that if you got out of the business, you weren't getting back into it.
Yeah.
That's changed quite a bit now. A lot of people, everybody know Molly Miller, who just got the Grand Canyon job, who is like 7,002 as a coach when she was at Drury and stuff. Look at Molly Miller. She was a GA. She was an assistant coach, and then she left and worked in marketing for a pharmaceutical company for a while. Now she's making $17 zillion at a for-profit institution and going to win a bunch of games. And her next stop is Power 5, baby. Right? So you can get in and out of the business much easier than you could have years ago. So I think that's a very encouraging thing for you guys.
And your point earlier, Coach, about we need good high school coaches. We need good AAU coaches. We need good middle school coaches. We need people that are role models. We need people that use the game as a lever to help people become the best version of themselves. There are so many high school coaches I live in a wonderful community, and we're very fortunate to have a guy who is all in, early to mid 30s. He's at the 11-year-old games on Saturday mornings. He's at he's everywhere. It's because he loves it and he knows it's something he's building upon. But we need people in the educational system beyond college just to continue building this game and bring the value of the game that you all love so much.
And not to belabor that point, but we're seeing a trickle-down effect where people that should be good high school coaches are taking GA or entry-level assistant jobs. And then the person that should have been coaching the JV, who would have been a great JV coach, is coaching the varsity. And the person that would have been a great junior high coach is now coaching the JV. And the person that should be coaching the 5th and 6th grade team is now coaching that. And so it's not that they're not great people. In fact, they're usually doing it for nothing, but it's not the quality that it used to be per se, as the college game has become such a, I'm going to make it to college or I'm not going to coach at all. Right. And we see that in our young people, like kids that say, well, if I'm not going to play, a lot of small high schools, like the town I live in is a Class 3 school. And what happens is these kids see that, well, if I'm not playing a lot as a sophomore, I'm not going to play anymore. And so what happens is teams that are great, you guys know this, teams that are great have that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 man that can play when they're seniors. There are no seniors that are 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 men anymore. They go do something else because they weren't playing all the time. Good coaching can help solve that problem too.
Really, really good responses. Also true. just kind of wrapping up, pulling all of the responses and insight and experiences you've shared, both of you, what is one thing, if you could go back to when you first started, that you wish you would have known or you would have told your younger self before you got into the sports industry?
Go ahead, Chris.
I think I answered this question on a podcast a couple weeks ago. Slow down.
Yeah.
Right. Slow down. When you're 18, you want to be 22. When you're 22, you want to be 30. When you're 30, all of a sudden you're 50 and you're like, where the hell did the last 30 years go? Right.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was at Dayton, and I wanted to be a college basketball coach so darn bad that tomorrow. Right. And the destination was more important than the journey. I didn't enjoy the journey as much as I could have. Right. And that's what I'll say. Slow down, take it all in, learn as much as you can, be a sponge, soak it up, and then squeeze out what you don't need. But slow down, because I mean, I'm talking about all aspects, right? I worked 60 hours a week in the basketball office. I took a full load of classes. I might have been to Timothy's on 3 nights a week at UD. I was burning it at both ends, and I missed certain things that could have helped me as an adult. I don't regret what I did, but as my age today, slow down and just enjoy that journey, because it goes fast, folks. It goes fast.
Totally agree. I got 2 quick things. The first one would be to, again, slow down. But the second one for me is, and this is going to lead to another quick point I want to make, if it's okay, Ashton, is that when you're looking for a job, you're so anxious. It's almost like Michael Scott when he's like, my turn, on The Office, where he's wanting to go. Like, that slow down piece in your interactions with folks. And I get it, because I'm that personality too. But I'm going to tell you, if anybody in here starts interviewing for an assistant coaching job, how many people plan on interviewing for assistant coaching jobs at any point in time? Raise your hand. Okay. Nobody cares what defense you want to run. Nobody cares whether you know how to run a ball screen offense. They want to know, can you drive the van? Can you not embarrass them? Can you relate to young people? And then you're going to get one shot to be able to put something into an X and O. Now, that's going to hurt a lot of your feelings, but I'm just going to tell you also, when you get to the point where you're interviewing for a head coaching job, if you're in the athletic director's office, everybody at that point knows how to recruit and coach basketball. That's a given. That's a given. Everybody, if you're interviewing with the head coach, everybody passes the litmus test that they know enough about basketball to have this job. But what makes you different, right? What makes you unique? What skill can you bring? Because all of you have some skill that is unique to you, and you need to sell that to be different, because everybody can coach basketball. Everybody can recruit. Everybody can do those things. So Chris, like you said, what is your superpower? And the last thing I want to say about taking a job, and I want to be careful how I say this, but it's important to say, don't take a job that you want so bad without looking at all the parts of it. Somebody told me one time, don't ever go work for somebody that doesn't have children if you have children. And I didn't listen. And that's important. Whatever that is for you. Like if it's somebody that says, don't go work for somebody that doesn't value church on Sunday, if that's important to you, that's not going to change. And that's not your boss's fault. That's your fault for entering into that situation thinking it was going to be different. So I really want to encourage you that that next job may be so great for you and it may make so much sense, but the way that person that's going to be your supervisor operates may be so opposite from you. I would encourage you to really consider that strongly, because quality of life, when you start slowing down and looking at the journey, is a big thing. So I took too long there. Sorry.
No, that was really good. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, just thank you both, Chris and James, for kind of giving us a unique perspective. I know over the past few weeks in quarantine, we've been doing a lot of X's and O's and relationships, but I think it's really, really important and vital to understand that the ball is going to stop one day for all of us. So thank you both for taking time out of your day to talk to us.
Hey, Pills, real quick. You just mentioned this quarantine scenario that we're in, right?
Mm-hmm.
This has been working on me for a while, since March 13th, right? And this is what I've been talking to my people about. There's 4 things that have been working on me, right? And we all need to take a deep breath, right? And we need to think about that our worst days are already behind us. We've survived all those. So take that deep breath, center yourself, but then embrace this pace. You guys are here. Embrace the pace, whether it's picked up for you. I'm as busy as I've ever been professionally. It's crazy how busy and how many people we're able to impact right now. But for a lot of us, it's slowed down. We're looking for things to fill our plate. Embrace that pace, whichever it may be. Focus on win. And that's not getting a W. That's what's important now, right? Every single day, what's important now. In this time, right now, I'm 6 minutes late for dinner with my wife and kids, right? But I like you all so much, I'm giving them one more nugget. But what's important now, right? And that's different for every single person on this call. And then the last piece is you got to be positive, because damn it, when you turn on the news, you'd think 326 million people have this thing, right? It's a horrible situation we're living through, but let's be that positive light. Let's be that energy to make sure people know that we can get through this together and that we'll rise by lifting others up, right? We need what's that? The hashtag at my high school here in town at Libertyville High School is hashtag is alone together, right? We're all alone, but we got to be here, folks. And I don't care where you live. I don't care what you do. This group, take a deep breath, embrace the pace, focus on what's important now, and be positive. There's a whole bunch of people, whole bunch of haters out there trying to keep us down. Let's go after our dreams, but don't let this thing slow us down from achieving what we want to achieve. Now I got to go hug my wife and kids.